You're breathing the wrong air, and you're definitely standing on the wrong side of the velvet rope. The cargo terminal is a mile east. I suggest you start walking before I have the police accelerate your departure." The insult cut through the pressurized silence of the classic private wing terminal like a jagged blade. Mr. Henderson, the lead gate agent, didn't even look up from his mahogany desk. He was the personification of mid-level gatekeeping, dressed in a formal navy blazer and gold-trimmed vest, his tie knotted with a suffocating, elitist precision. He looked at Elias with a visceral, unearned disgust, as if his presence was a physical stain on the polished marble floors. Elias stood perfectly still, his hands resting naturally at his sides. He was dressed in a bespoke midnight blue three-piece suit, the silk lining catching the cold, sharp light of the massive tiered crystal chandelier hanging from the gold leaf ceiling. He wasn't just a traveler, he was the personification of quiet authority. "I am on the manifest for Flight 702, Mr. Henderson," Elias said, his voice a low, steady hum that seemed to vibrate the very air. "Seat 1A. I'd suggest you scan the ticket so we can both move on with our afternoon." Henderson let out a sharp, mocking bark of a laugh that caused the social jury, a group of elite travelers in charcoal wool coats and designer luggage, to pause their conversations. They drifted closer, their faces twisted into judgmental smirks, enjoying the correction of a man who looked too comfortable in a space they considered their private sanctuary. "1A? You wouldn't know 1A if it sat on your lap," Henderson sneered, stepping from behind the desk to invade Elias's personal space. "This airline has a classic legacy. We cater to the titans of industry, the families who built the foundations of this city. We don't cater to people who think a sharp suit can hide a lack of pedigree. You're a distraction to my real passengers, and frankly, you're an eyesore." The escalation hit its breaking point. Elias held out his boarding pass, his eyes narrowing with a surgical focus. "The ticket is in your hand, Henderson. It contains all the information you need to avoid a catastrophic career mistake. I suggest you use it. I've spent 15 years curating this gate, and I know a fraud when I see one," Henderson hissed. His face flushed a deep, ugly crimson. In a raw, unposed moment of physical aggression, Henderson reached out. He didn't just grab the ticket. He gripped Elias's shoulder with a white-knuckled shove and, with the other hand, tore the boarding pass in half, letting the jagged pieces flutter onto the marble floor like snow. "There's your scan," Henderson bellowed, his voice echoing off the gold leaf ceiling. "Someone call security. We have a fraudulent passenger attempting to breach a secure flight. Get him off my floor before I have him arrested for trespassing. I want him out of my sight." Elias hit the stone pillar behind him from the force of the shove, but he didn't stumble. He remained perfectly still, absorbing the assault with an icy, terrifying calm. He didn't reach for a phone. He didn't reach for a tablet. He simply looked at the gold clock on the terminal wall as the second hand swept toward 4:12 p.m. 15 years at this gate, Henderson?" Elias whispered, the coldness in his voice seemingly dimming the chandelier above them. "That's a long time to spend building a life just to watch it dissolve in the time it takes to tear a piece of paper. You should have checked the tail number on the plane you're so proud of." The heavy mahogany doors of the VIP lounge didn't just open. They were thrown wide by a phalanx of security in formal charcoal suits, followed by the airline's regional director, whose face was the color of unpolished bone. Behind them marched a lead counsel carrying a silver-trimmed briefcase that caught the cold, sharp light of the massive tiered crystal chandelier. The social jury of elite travelers instinctively retreated, their judgmental smirks evaporating as they realized the fraud, in the midnight blue suit, was the only person in the room who wasn't moving. Henderson didn't let go of Elias's shoulder. If anything, he tightened his grip, his knuckles white against the bespoke wool. He turned toward the director with a frantic, sweating face, his voice cracking with a desperate need for validation. "Sir, thank God. I've apprehended this man. He's been trespassing, and he just physically threatened me after I caught him with a forged 1A boarding pass. He's a danger to the security of this flight." The regional director didn't even glance at Henderson. He walked straight past the velvet-lined pillars and stopped exactly 2 paces from Elias. He bowed his head with a level of profound, silent respect usually reserved for a head of state. "The wire transfer for the controlling interest of Aether Air has cleared, sir," the director said, his voice cutting through the terminal's thick silence like a surgical blade. "The board of directors has ratified the emergency acquisition. As of 60 seconds ago, the classic legacy of this airline has a new owner. You are now the sole proprietor of this fleet, this terminal, and every contract within these walls." The air seemed to vanish from the room. The social jury froze, their mouths hanging open in mid-judgment. Henderson's hand began to shake so violently that it slid off Elias's shoulder as if he had been struck by lightning. His skin turned a ghostly, translucent white, his arrogance evaporating into a cold, pathetic sweat that soaked through his formal navy blazer. Elias slowly reached down and picked up the 2 torn halves of his boarding pass from the marble floor. He didn't look at the paper. He looked Henderson directly in the eyes with a gaze of chilling, surgical precision. "You talked a lot about curating today, Mr. Henderson," Elias said, his voice a low, lethal hum that seemed to vibrate the very marble beneath their feet. "But a legacy built on physical assault, on the humiliation of others, and on the delusion of superiority isn't a business, it's a liability. You aren't protecting this gate. You are the reason this airline was failing until I bought it 10 minutes ago." He looked at the visible red handprint on the shoulder of his suit, then looked at the director. "Liquidate his contract immediately. No severance. No benefits. I want a full audit of every passenger he has turned away in the last 15 years. And hand the high-definition security footage of him shoving me directly to the officers waiting at the entrance. I want him escorted out of my airport in the same classic style he tried to show me, in handcuffs through the main terminal." As the officers moved in, handcuffing Henderson in front of the very elite crowd he had spent his life trying to impress, Elias didn't look back at the wreckage of the man's career. He stood in the center of the terminal, his figure framed by the gold leaf ceiling. "To the rest of you," he said, his voice projecting to every corner of the silent wing, addressing the stunned social jury, who were now desperately trying to hide their faces. "This flight is grounded. In fact, the entire fleet is grounded for a total safety and ethics audit. We're scrubbing the foundation until the stench of this morning is gone. We are firing the entire management staff of this wing by the end of the hour. Get out. Your status isn't good here anymore." The mahogany doors closed on the old era of Aether Air, leaving the man in the midnight blue suit standing alone under the brilliant, cold light of his new empire. If you believe that character is the only true inheritance, like this video and share it. Tell us in the comments. Would you have let him keep his pension after that shove? Subscribe now for more stories of unstoppable dignity.